right, I'm going to take a few questions. Any questions?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, we got the budget forecast. I just heard Chairman Mendelson said that he described it as not dire, but he said it's a sobering budget. Every budget is difficult, I'm sure, for you to approach. How are you approaching this season, and what are the difficult decisions that are ahead for you?
Well, we're approaching it in the same way we always do. We just wrapped up our series of budget engagements last year. We always get a budget forecast in February that is kind of our last marker about what we have to do to balance the budget. Now, keep in mind, we've been working on it since November, so it will require us to kind of reshape the work that we've done to this point, but we think that we're going to get there.
And just to follow up, what are some of the areas that you're already looking where cuts are going to have to be inevitable as we're looking at the situation?
Well, I kind of want to emphasize this point, and I didn't have a chance to do it this morning, but we're still going to have a lot of money. Okay, so while our revenue is not growing in the way that we expected based on the December estimate, we'll have robust revenues coming in to serve 702,000 Washingtonians. So just like we talked about in the last couple of years, we have to be strategic in what we do, and our focus has been on making sure that we have robust investments in public safety and public education, and that we're investing in our downtown because we know that the downtown is where we produce most of our commercial revenue. I would expand that to say we have to invest in all of our commercial and economic activity so that we're ensuring a growth plan for the city.
Mayor Bowser.
Yep.
Chairman Mendelson was very clear that there are going to have to be cuts to programs and services. He said for him the only thing off the table were tax increases. He said he doesn't think the city's raised taxes in the recent years. What can you tell residents to expect? I mean, this is a $300+ million a year in the 3 out years is a lot of money to have to cut when you can't rely on federal funding or one-time sources this time around. What can you tell residents to expect as far as what's off the table for you? Are tax increases off the table? Are cuts again, Chairman Mendelson in his briefing this morning said human services represents 25% of the budget. He says it's hard to imagine not cuts to human services.
Well, I never take anything off the table when I'm formulating the budget, especially we hope that this is the latest update before I have to send the budget to the council. So I never take anything off the table. We, in the discussions that we had last week with our residents, we asked them we do a budget exercise and ask each resident to spend $100. This time we said, we're not going to ask you to spend $100. We're going to ask you to spend $90 because this is how we have approached this budget all along. Planning for less, recognizing that the cost of everything has gone up. And people know that because they know that that's happening in their own households. So what I would tell residents is to know that we're going to work very hard and be strategic about the investments that we're making. And we're going to take care of core government services. We always start there, making sure the government does what it has to do. Then we look at the programs, and we have a lot of them in our city. We have to be pretty hardcore about what's working and what's not working, and advance with the things that are working and add value. But I also, and I spoke a little bit about this, and it's interesting that we're here today talking about our plans for the next 25 years, our comprehensive plan for the next 25 years. We have to keep growing. And the thing about this and these forecasts, even when we were talking about the commercial forecast, there was a dip and then it bottomed out and then it'll go up. The same will be true for how we address job loss. We will look at the forecast with the best information that we have. And people who are being impacted now is a big jolt to our city and to their families. into their hopefulness about, just why this is happening, and it's no fault of their own. But we still have to plan for when we come up, the upswing in the economy, and it will happen. And when we are in that upswing, have we built on infrastructure that is going to support the growth and the comeback from the downturn?
Chairman Mendelson also talked about the impact to capital projects. He specifically talked about the Daly building and the jail. The new jail, the possibility that this outlook, the forecast, could negatively impact the district's ability to borrow. Can you talk about big projects like those? And, RFK, what does this do to your ability to move forward with your plan? You saw some of the protests at your engagements over the weekend. What do you say now to residents about RFK, given this somewhat dire revenue forecast?
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to with what the chairman said, but we will still be making capital investments with this budget. Absolutely. And we have to. The last thing I want to tell residents is that we're experiencing some type of downturn for the next 4 years. And on the other side of it, we don't have any plans. On the other side of it, we will still have a vacant RFK, or we will still have other vacant projects. That's not the way out of it. The way out of it is to have plans for 4 years and invest in them so that you have an income driver. The big thing that we have to be strategic about is investing in things that are catalytic, that create additional dollars, not take additional dollars. And sometimes that's a hard concept for everybody to embrace.
Mayor Bowser?
Yes.
Question, what makes a football stadium the best anchor of economic development, and have other options been explored as to what can best give you your best bang for your buck?
Well, we can look at a lot of our projects around the city and see that they had anchors, just like St. Elizabeth's. There was literally nothing happening at St. Elizabeth's until we made the investment in the entertainment and sports arena. And now we have housing, we have jobs, we'll open a hospital. Same is true at the Wharf, where there's a lot of housing, but there are drivers, there are hotels, there's the Anthem, there's activity. And I think that we can see some other more sluggish activity in other projects that don't have a driver, that have all-day traffic or night traffic or people living there. So you have to have that mix of uses. At this point, the types of uses that have expressed interest at RFK are all sports related.
Follow-up question, if you don't mind. So in regards to the 2050 plan, and it's too soon to tell, of course, but what consideration is there around the use of that development? So as far as, what's the temperature like with residents? Are residents open to having that much activity around where they live, at all times of the day? What considerations are there around traffic congestion, things like that?
Well, in any large tract proposal, and I'll ask Anita to jump in, there is a series of kind of tests for works for the community. Infrastructure, which there's not any really there, so that's going to have to be built. The roads network, public transportation, access to emergency routes, all of those things.
Pardon me, that 10% from the budget forum, the community forums, are you saying that you guys are going to be working with 10% less this time around? Is that what you're aiming for in terms of the budget carve out?
Well, we don't determine what we're working with. That is determined by the independent chief financial officer who forecasts and certifies the amount of revenue coming in. The CFO issued a forecast last week that says that in the upcoming year, it'll be about $300 million less. Our total local revenues are about $10 billion. Yeah.
Were you wanting to add anything, though, before I ask? I just want to give – okay. I saw you starting to watch, so I just want to make sure. Mayor Rebecca with 7 News. As it relates to RFK, can you talk about now with this projected $1 billion deficit, do you think – how is that impacting proposals, and do you feel any taxpayer contributions should now be off the table?
No, I don't.
And can you explain your reasoning?
I just did. I already responded to Mark in saying that we still have to invest in our growth. Who wants to look around in 4 years and see the same thing at RFK? No tax revenue coming in. So we have to, that's an engine, that's an economic engine. There'll be others, things like that, that we have to continue to, or there will be new things, because what we have to do is to make sure that we're replacing the activity and revenue that we are missing from income in other ways. So we have to make those. We have to attract new companies. We have to attract new economic activity. Otherwise, in 4 years, we'll be here in a very bad position.
And as it relates to the DC 2050 plan, you touched on this a little bit, but if you can talk some more about how these projected federal layoffs could impact things, looking further ahead down the road.
Well, further down the road, what it means is we have to make sure we continue to invest in industry and business in different jobs. This, the federal government has been decreasing the number of jobs they have in the National Capital Region for a number of years. So we have been investing in diversifying our economy that long. But this jolt of having this number of people at one time with the job loss is going to be a jolt to our economy. But we have to continue to invest in how do we bring more tech in? How do we bring more entertainment and tourism in? How do we bring in other private employers who are hiring DC residents and providing good paying jobs?
We do one more. Mayor Bowser.
Yes.
A couple of weeks ago, we were all bracing for the possibility of an executive order coming out of the White House. You acknowledge you've been briefed somewhat about that possibility. Mm-hmm. And then subsequently, you commented that publicly that you didn't know that there even was an executive order anymore. I'm wondering if you can update us on your conversations with the White House around that, and if in fact that is now off the table because you've reached some deal or you just things are getting worked out.
I can't say that it was on the table, and I can't say that it was off the table. I can say, like many of you, we responded to rumors that they were working on something, and that's really all I can say.
So you don't know one way or another. You haven't had subsequent briefings to the last time.
You're testing my memory now. I'm sure I've had conversations. I can't remember if the last time we spoke to now, if I've had a conversation, but I think the last thing I mentioned was, where we are.
Do you have concerns? Are you preparing for the possibility that in a reconciliation budget act, that the Bowser Act or some similar legislation could be put in there that the Senate wouldn't be able to filibuster and block, that would have to get...
I don't think that is a possibility with their current rules.
And in my last, the chairman was asked today, I don't know who asked the question, was asked today regarding RFK if he and the city would be open to owning or being part owner in some way, similar, I guess, to Green Bay, of the team in order to sweeten the deal for public financing. Does that come up with you? Is that something that you would consider?
Mark, I'm not going to talk about our negotiations, just the specifics of our negotiations, other than to say they're ongoing. We all recognize the urgency at getting to some agreement, and I hope that we're able to do that.
Any thought on the timeline? Do you have a deadline in mind? You want to throw us any bone at all in this spectrum?
Only then. We're working super hard, Mark. It's important, and sometimes we can kind of stadium or team, and it all sounds like fun and games, but it's not. It's serious about how we develop 100. It's even more serious now. How do we develop 177 acres on the banks of the Anacostia River in Ward 7? And that has been my charge for 10 years, and it's going to continue to be my charge.
Mayor, can you please speak to the workforce development strategy piece for RFK?
Well, not specifically for RFK. I don't think we are that advanced in the discussion, but we will be saying more about workforce development strategy as it relates to our workers who've been displaced or fired from the federal government. We're working on plans around that and how we can talk to our community about that so people can get on their feet as fast as possible. The truth is, a lot of people will be able to get back to work soon, and we want to smooth out that process as best we can.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you.